I really struggled with my purpose of why I'm here, what am I supposed to do, how am I supposed to do it, who am I supposed to impact. Now it don't matter. My name's Caleb Frame. I'm coming, gonna tell you guys my testimony and uh, my leukemia fight and what I've been through. And May 6th of 2019, I went into work that day, not feeling real good, tired, real worn out, and I just couldn't make it through the day. I was kind of falling asleep at my desk. My brother worked with me at the time, and I just told the boss, hey, I need to go get checked out, thinking I had pneumonia. I had a lot of cough and chest congestion, and so I went into the hospital and went in there, gave some blood work, and they were doing a bunch of tests, and doctor came in and told me, that I have leukemia, and they admitted me for 7 days and start the chemo by pill. I did by pill form, and so at first my initial reaction was I didn't want to hear it. I wanted to take the IVs and take everything out and just go back to work and try to go back to living what I thought was normal, not realizing this is going to be my new normal. And the doctor's like, I don't recommend that, and started going more in depth with my blood work and explaining it to me. And I called my brother that I worked with. I told him to come to the hospital. Didn't tell him why until he got there, and told him. And I just remember that day like it was yesterday. It just changed my whole entire life. It changed the way I thought about stuff and how I did things. But the one thing is, I was mad at God. Like, I was mad. I was like asking why, the what fors, and never really seeking him out in a good way. I was more angry towards him, and I'm like, why'd you do this? Why me? And so over the next 4 years, I took the chemo every single day. Tried to work. Every time I tried to work, everything would get thrown out of whack. Like, and what I mean by that, with my blood work, all that stuff would just get all messed up, and then I'd get taken back out of work. And then we had COVID. COVID happened. The doctors didn't know nothing about COVID, or really, because it was all new to everyone. And so my doctors took me out of work because of my situation with leukemia and the immune system and stuff like that. They were afraid that if I was out in the public and doing all that, that I would get sick, and which that I was never afraid of. I just kind of like, I didn't want to stop living life, but at the same time, like with all that stuff going on, I had to kind of reel things back. And so still just trying to go through it, trying to manage it. And there would be times where I'd go in for blood work. I'd get these blood works done every 3 months that would check the ABR-BCL number of the leukemia in my blood. There would be times that I was close to becoming undetected, which my cancer will never go in remission because it's the 9th and 22nd chromosomes mutated. So they don't have a way of mutating them back to normal. So I'll always be undetected. I can stay in undetected stage as long as the medication works. Well, and the biggest turning point in fighting this leukemia in the last almost 5 years, in 2023, January 2023, I went in for the big blood work, the ABR-BCL test, and they noticed that things were getting almost to the blast phase of leukemia. And so they switched my chemo medication, the oral pill, to a different oral pill. And they sent it to me in the mail, and they told me, this is how you take it. And once you get it, immediately start it. And I did that February, end of January 2023 and the beginning of February of 2023. I started taking it, and immediately I knew something was wrong. Because leading up to that point in January, I went to 8 different specialists because I was getting to the point where I couldn't hardly walk, I couldn't stand, I couldn't feel my legs. It was everything from the waist down. And then in 2023, that's when they told me, hey, things are not working, and we need to switch you. So they did that, and I just remember, like, once I started taking the new one and not being able to move, I was bedridden to the point where I had a walker next to my bed. And I was done. I remember telling my family, calling my dad, my brother. I just remember telling them I'm done. I got nothing left. I can't fight this fight no more. And February 3rd, or let me back up a second, sorry. A couple nights before, I was telling them how to plan my funeral and what to say to my family and how to say it and what to do, and don't let people say that I lost to the cancer. Just tell them I gave it everything I had. You know, like, I was always trying to be bigger than the cancer. I was always trying to be the one that I thought I was going to beat it. And the whole time I didn't have God with me in my walk, in my fight. Even though he was there, I wasn't paying attention to it that he was there, if that makes sense, you know. And February 3rd, I just remember telling my family member to call the ambulance. Told her to tell my loved ones my goodbyes for me and what to say to them. Gave them a hug and told them I loved her. Got out on the stretcher. They had to have 6 guys come pick me up out of my bed and put me in this chair to take me out to the front of the house and put me on the stretcher. And I just remember telling the EMT that I was dying. I had nothing left. And I just remember him putting the IV in my arm, and that was the last thing I remember until I was out, and I remember being in this roundhouse with these people that made me feel so uneasy, so I felt so like overwhelmed by their presence. Something I've never felt my whole entire life, and I was very frustrated, very agitated. And my grandmother came with 4 other people. My grandmother had passed in August of 2020, and she was a big influence in my life. She's one I counted on quite a bit. We just had a special bond, and she came with 4 other people. And when I went out of that roundhouse with her and the 4 other people, we were walking down this road, and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, I can't describe it. I don't know how to describe it. It was just I went from the most uneasy person, agitated, to the most peace I've ever felt in my whole entire life, added up to that point. Like, I've never felt it. And I remember my grandmother, we were having this conversation of, like, she kept telling me to come back and be at home with her. And I just kept telling her, I was like, Grandma, I'm not ready yet. Because all I could think about was family and friends that I truly care about. And I knew my work here on earth wasn't done yet. And I remember her telling me 3 or 4 times it's okay to come back and be at home with me. Everybody else will be okay too. And I just said to her, and as I was saying it to her again, I'm like, Grandma, I'm not ready. We kind of were walking, and the 4 people that we were with, one was in front of us, then it was me and my grandmother walking side by side. I had my arm around her, and she had her arm around me. We were walking, and then the 3 other people were behind us. And I remember at one point when we were having this conversation, I looked off to my right and I seen Jesus. And in that moment, I looked at Grandma and I was like, wow, he is real. Because I've doubted for so long, my whole entire life. I doubted him in negative situations and positive. I would say in the negative situations, why, God? Why is this happening? Or when something positive happened, I'd be like, God, really? Why did you let that happen to me? Why couldn't you let that happen to somebody else? Like I just always questioned him. But in that moment with her, and I seen Jesus, and I was in awe. Like a lot of people can be in awe, like seeing a celebrity or something like that. But this is something I've never felt. Like I just looked at it and I was like, I can't. It was amazing. We didn't speak. Me and Jesus didn't speak, but his presence was so known to the point where I can't doubt him. I can't sit here and tell anyone, hey, he's not real. I know he's real. And from what I've seen and from what I've seen from him. And I remember in that moment too, right after that, the lady that was walking in front of us, she turned to me and said, if you're at peace with your decision, then go back and be at peace. And the hardest thing for me was telling my grandma no, because I never told her no. I was like, you do everything for Grandma, you know? And I'm 6'4", she was a little 5'1". So I remember I leaned down and I gave her a hug, kissed her on the cheek, and I told her I loved her to the moon and back. And she said the same thing back to me, because that's what we always said to each other. Ever since I was a little kid, that's what I remember. And I woke up out of the coma, and I'm in the hospital room. I'm looking at family, and I said to them, I'm like, where's Grandma at? They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I was just with her. And at this time when I'm waking up, they don't have me on a bunch of drugs or sedation. They don't have me on none of that. They completely took me off of that so they could get me to come to. And I said I was just with her, and I explained to her what I just explained, and they're like, she passed away 3 years ago. I'm like, no, I understand that, but I was just with her. So because of that, and seeing Jesus and his presence and I thought she was coming back with me. So when I woke up, I rested, and I remember talking with God for the first time, like having a real conversation with him for the first time in my whole life. And I said, whatever you got in store for me, God, please reveal it to me. And immediately, when I said that, what immediately was put on my heart in that moment is help as many people as you can. And that's why I'm sitting here doing this video today, because not everybody can sit in front of me and talk to me about it. So that's why I want to do this. And so if somebody wants to see it, they can see it. And if I just help out one person for the rest of the time I'm here on this earth, it was all worth it. It was all worth the fight of fighting leukemia, because I'm still fighting it. It was all worth it. Because And I woke up I went in February 3rd, woke up February 23rd, and the next thing I said to God was, please give me the strength to be able to get back to somewhat of normal what I was before I came in here, before I was bedridden, before I was diagnosed with leukemia May 6th of 2019. And that's the first time, because when I woke up, I couldn't move. I had 100% muscle atrophy. And when I woke up and I'm seeing my family and I'm still talking. He didn't take the gift of gab away from me. But my muscle, I couldn't move. I literally, all I could do was I could barely move my head. I could barely move my feet. I could barely move my hands, but everything else I couldn't do. I couldn't roll in bed. I couldn't sit up in bed by myself. They had this like tarp thing underneath me to lift me up from the ceiling, like these ceiling things that would pick me up and move me around in my bed, and that was brutal. The pain and losing your independence was humbling. Like, to rely on other people to help you live, and I was just humbled by it. I couldn't fathom living like that for the rest of my life. So, to me talking to God, I'm like, please give me the strength. And I remember the first day of physical therapy, they're coming in my room, and they brought this machine in to help me, like, it was like a hoist. They were going to put me in it and help me stand up, like force my body to be in the standing position. And I remember talking to God, and I'm like, please give me the strength today. Even if it's just for a split moment or for a long time, just show me that you're here with me. And that was the first time in my life that I paid attention. He's shown me a bunch of times in my life that he's there for me, but the first time I paid attention was that day, because they put me in this hoist and stood me up for 30 seconds. It might not seem like a long time for a lot of people, but for me it was, because of the pain, the dizziness, because I was flat for 19 days. My equilibrium was off. I had no muscle movement. I atrophied completely through my whole entire body. And he gave me the strength to stand for 30 seconds that day. The next day they came in, I stood for a minute. The next day, I told them on a Friday. So my first day was on a Wednesday of physical therapy, and Thursday, and then Friday, because they told me on the weekends you don't get physical therapy, we don't have enough staff for it. So Thursday night I prayed to God. I'm like, God, please give me every bit of strength you can give me and the will to not only show me, but to show my family and my friends I'm gonna get through this. So Friday, my physical therapist came in, and I said to him, I'm like, you're not bringing that machine in today. And they're like, what are you talking about? You've only stood for 30 seconds Wednesday, 1 minute on Thursday. I'm like, don't worry about it. I was like, just please listen to what I'm telling you. And I was like, just bring in a walker and a belt strap to put around me, and just please have 2 people on each side of me. But I was like, I still feel like that even with you guys here, I'm still going to show you guys I got this. And so they listened, and which I to this day, I am glad they did, because that was another big turning point in my life where I knew God was listening to me. I knew God was answering my prayers. I knew that things were going to go the way I needed it to go to be able to get back to where I need to be, because of the other prayer I had asked him. So I stood up. They had me on a belt, and there was a physical therapist in front of me trying to grab me. I'm like, no, let me do it. And it was the hardest thing that I've ever done. I've done a lot of hard things in life, but this was the hardest thing, is pulling myself up, my whole body weight. I'm not a small guy. with this walker, pulling myself up, standing. And then they're like, do you think you can walk 5 feet to this chair that was sitting in my room that was on rollers? I'm like, yeah, I can do it. And so I did, sat down, got dizzy because of my equilibrium, still trying to adjust. And they're like, do you think you can stand up and sit down from the chair to your walker back down to the chair? I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, I can do it. Let's do it. And so I did it, and I did it 6 times, and I was worn out. I literally felt like I just ran a huge marathon. I'm feeling nauseous. I just like, and I'm sitting back down, I'm like, how did I just do this? And I kind of, in my head, I'm sitting there talking to God. I'm like, God, thank you for being there for me. Thank you for doing what you just did, because it ain't just me. This whole life that we all live is way bigger than ourselves. It ain't just me that gave me that strength to be able to do that. And then I asked him, I'm like, God, please give me one more stand up and 5 more steps back to my bed to put me back in bed so I could relax, because I was wiped. And sure enough, I stood back up, took everything I had, my body shaking and trembling, and I walked that 5 feet back to bed, and I got back to bed, and I remember laying there just saying to myself, there ain't nothing that you can't do as long as you got God with you. And I was like, it was incredible. And then that weekend I got to reflect, because then my family started telling me things that were happening to me while I was in the coma. My liver was shutting down, kidneys were failing, my heart was racing at like 160 beats per minute for a couple days straight. They had to shock it. Uh, they were taking all these tests, sending them out to like all over the country, trying to figure out what was wrong with me, why I had so much pain in my lower extremities, why I was bedridden, and everything kept coming. Every single test that they did came back negative. They couldn't figure out why. And so I'm reflecting on everything my family's saying, I'm processing it. And I eventually just told them, and the doctors, every time a doctor would come in, I'm like, it's God's will. Because when I woke up from that coma, with everything I just told you, the only thing coming out of me was a feeding tube. That was it. All the prayers here on earth were answered. Me being with Grandma and the 4 other people she had, and me getting to see his presence and seeing him, like, he had his hand on me the whole entire time, and that the staff at the hospital. And I was like, it's God's will, because they were all confused. Like, you just, like, dying, and like, the only thing they could contribute it to, and they're not even 100% attributing it to this, is they think I had a drug interaction between the 2 chemo drugs. And but they're not even 100% on that. And so I was sitting there thinking, and I just told my family, I'm like, it's God's will. It's God. I truly believe that God helped me through that situation. So I stopped doubting Him and stopped wondering, is He real or is He not real, or why does He do this and why does He do this? Like, to stop all that, because I did it my whole life, my whole entire life. Even though we went to church when I was a kid, and I still doubted it. I never grasped onto it. I never understood it. And I understand it more now because of the experience I had going through what I went through. He gave me the strength. I woke up February 23rd. I told you about those 3 days, having the weekend off. They finally got me in a rehab facility on March the 10th. And they came in my room. They told me, hey, because of insurance purposes and stuff like that, you have to be able to conquer all these goals. We're going to have you for up to 30 days. I was like, that ain't happening. And they're like, well, what do you mean that ain't happening? I'm like, that's not happening. Like, That's not happening. Like, I want to be out of here by March 17th. March 17th, my grandmother that I was with in heaven, that came and got me with the 4 other people, that was her wedding anniversary for her and my grandpa. And I wanted to be out by that day or sooner to show her, hey, I got this. With the help of God and everything, I'm like, I got this. So in the rehab facility that Saturday, I started physical therapy. I had to walk the hallway, and my room was all the way at the end to where the physical therapy room was all the way at the other end. So it was 660 feet. They had it marked out on the floors. They had it all marked. They had like certain doors to like certain offices color coded to let you know, like, okay, this and so forth. And the first day, that Saturday, they're like, no, we'll just let you rest, because they had to transition me from the university hospital over to the university's physical therapy center, which is just across the river there in Minneapolis. And they're like, no, we're just let you rest. I'm like, no, I don't want to rest. I was like, I want to get this done. I was like, because in the hospital on the weekends, I wasn't able to get no physical therapy. And I felt like if I don't get something every single day or get something in every day, that the day that I don't, it's just going to put me 2 days behind. That was my mindset. So every single day, I just kept going more and more and more and more. And March 15th, that was on a Wednesday, they came in my room, and 3 of the physical therapists, 3 of the doctors, and one of the nurses' aides, they came in my room, and I'm like, I kind of sit there like, what the heck? Let's get ready. Like, what are they getting ready to have me do today? Because there's so many people in there. And they had all this paperwork, and they said to me, like, they're like, Caleb, you've conquered everything so far in such a short amount of time. There's only one thing we have left for you to do. And I'm like, well, what's that? And my dad was coming up there that day to bring me lunch, Culver's, because I was getting tired of the hospital food. And for some reason, I wanted Culver's. So he was bringing that up to me, and I said to him, I'm like, well, what do I need to do? And he was like, you have to walk upstairs with a railing and use your cane. And then when you come back down the stairs, you need to walk down the stairs holding on just to the railing without the cane. And I looked at him, I'm like, well, where the heck are the stairs? Let's do this. I want to get out of here. And so we go to the fire exit and we do the stairs. I go up the stairs, and I looked at the doctors and nurses, and I tossed my cane to one of the nurses at the bottom of the stairs. And I walked back down the stairs, and I was tired. I was wore out because of the previous stuff I did that morning. And I was done. And when I got to the last step, I was like, thank you, God. I appreciate everything you've given me to keep fighting this fight. And I remember when my dad showed up, like 10 minutes later, he's got the Culver's, and I looked at him like, don't even take that out of the bag. He's like, why is that? And I said to him, I'm like, well, I get to go home. And he's like, what? He didn't believe me at first, and then doctors and nurses came in and they told him I get to go home. And me and my dad are super close, and I've never seen him get so emotional or overwhelmed with emotion. And I just looked at him, and I kind of got overwhelmed a little bit, and I'm like, hey, let's just be happy. I'm leaving. I'm getting to go home. I was like, take me home. So he's like, all right, son. And he went back down, got the truck, met me and the nurses out front. But before I got to leave, I got to ring the bell of the accomplishment and all the people, and they just couldn't believe how quick I did it and how, and it's just, I just tell everyone it was God. He was putting and instilling that strength into me to be able to get past what I was going through. And I got out March 15th. 2 weeks after that, I went to a motorcycle show, and I kept telling my doctors when I was immobilized, not moving very well, that I was going to be out and going to that motorcycle show that happens every year. I told them in April if the weather up there in Minnesota, it gets it's crazy. It doesn't know what it's going to do some days. And I said in April, if it clears up, then I'm going to be on my motorcycle. And it was just me setting these goals and praying to God, just keep giving me the strength to be able to hit these goals, to be able to make the new goals to keep moving forward. And that's what I did in November. He told me, my doctor told me I was undetected, and then a lot of things just since last year, just in this last 11, almost 12 months, I've been so blessed. Some people at the end of the year, New Year's Eve, going into New Year's Day, they make these goals and stuff like that, or they reflect on it and say, a lot of people would say 2023, if they would have went through what I went through, was horrible. I tell people it was one of the best years of my life. Because for the simple fact that I'm still here. I get a second chance. Most people don't get a second chance. And second to that, I have a relationship with God that nobody can take from me. Nobody can come to me and say he's not real. I seen him. I've had people tell me you're in a dream. I wasn't in a dream. My body was here on this earth, but my soul had left for a moment. And I got to come back. And so for me, to be able to have that, I don't want to disrespect God now. I get lost for words sometimes because of how grateful I am for where I'm at. And I say I couldn't have done it without my family and friends. I'm right on that. But the number one is I couldn't have done it without God. I couldn't have went through what I went through and come out of it with only a feeding tube, half my whole body shutting down, my organs, and then I come back to and all my organs, when I wake up, they all are, my kidney fine, liver's fine, heart functions fine, and I'm still to this day not taking any meds for any of that. The only meds I'm taking is metformin and my chemo, diabetes medication and my chemo. I'm not taking anything for any of the organs that were failing. That's just amazing to me. It's pretty incredible. And so one of the last things I would say is, if anybody's watching this, please reach out to me if you have any questions or if you want to know a little bit more about me, or the last thing I'd say is just pray and give it all to God, whatever you're going through, and don't ever quit and don't ever give up. Because February 3rd, that morning, I quit. I've quit on a lot of things in life, but I've never quit on myself. But that morning, I quit on myself. And in that moment, I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know if I was going to hell or heaven, because I wasn't speaking with God in that moment. I wasn't speaking with no one. I was just ready to give up the fight. And so that's one thing I'd tell someone: don't ever give up, because there's something better on the other side of it, of whatever that struggle is. So, yeah.